Hello and welcome to the Europe Conversation. I'm Stefan Grobe. My guest today is from Denmark. Dan Jørgensen, former Minister of Climate and Energy, former member of the European Parliament for the Social Democrats, and for a year now, the European Commissioner for Energy and Housing. Welcome to the program, sir, and thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Stefan.
So let me start with housing. To my knowledge, there has never been a housing commissioner before you came to town. Why has Brussels discovered that topic, which is really in the domain of the member states?
Well, first and foremost, it's a sign that we take serious that we are in a housing crisis. And when the demand for political action is there, then it's only natural that we also in Brussels take action. And also, if you look at what happened last year in the European Parliament elections, actually housing was, if not number one, then certainly at the top of the agenda in most European countries. I wish it wasn't necessary, because I wish we were not in a housing crisis. Unfortunately, we are, so we need to do more to rectify that situation.
Well, on this topic, of course, the crisis, as you call it, I mean, there have always been ups and downs on the real estate market. Why is it different this time? Some people, you say it's a crisis, other people say it's an emergency.
Yeah, well, I might be tempted to also call it an emergency. I can certainly see why, for the individuals that are not able to find a home, if you don't have a roof over your head, certainly for them it is an emergency. At a societal level, we speak about a crisis because it's clear that looking at the numbers, we simply have an unbalance between the supply and the demand in housing. This means that the prices on rent goes up. It means that we have a shortage of houses in many cities, and that again then has the consequence that normal people, so teachers, nurses, police officers, are no longer able to work where they serve. This is, of course, for society not a good thing, and for the individual, it's pretty much an emergency.
Can you name a few reasons?
Sure. No. So it's clear that one of the problems that we face is short-term rentals. So short-term rentals as such is a good thing. It's good that we're able to travel and visit each other. If you live in a home that's expensive for you, maybe it's...
So we're talking about Airbnb.
Yeah. Maybe what makes it possible for you to stay there is that you can rent it out sometimes and get that income. But when it's happening in a more systematic way, where instead of actually having homes, these normal people having homes, these houses are bought up and then only used for Airbnb or some other platform, short-term rentals. Then it crowds out normal housing. This is a huge problem in many cities. You will also hear cities talking about over-tourism. Now, tourism is a good thing, of course. It brings income and it's good for cultural reasons. But it's not good if it's felt like it's ruining the lives of the people that live in these cities. And one of the consequences, unfortunately, is that the prices on the housing goes up significantly.
So we have the short-term rentals, we have the increase of housing prices. Why is there no keeping up with construction and strengthening the offer?
One of the things that we try to do is look at how can Europe help boost construction of more houses. Now, there's a lot of red tape in this sector, a lot of bureaucracy, and we want to simplify the rules, make it easier, looking at permitting, for instance, so that this process can go faster. Also, there's a lot of speculation, so the financialization of the sector. Housing is considered by many investors as a commodity, so you'll place your money there in the hope of making money. Now, I don't mind people making money. It's a good thing in a market. It can also drive investments. But we also have to acknowledge that when that is the case, then maybe the investments that are being made are not necessarily made on behalf of society. It doesn't necessarily lead to the best result for society as a whole, even though the persons, people, companies making the investments might make money short term. So can we do something about this? First step, of course, is to get an overview. Just how bad is the situation? How much of it can be dealt with on a national level? How much of it do we need to deal with on a European level?
You mentioned over-tourism. That certainly concerns cities like Venice, Barcelona, Amsterdam. But the crisis is elsewhere too, mid-sized towns, rural areas. Is that just a trickle-down effect, or are there other powers at work here?
Yeah, so I'm very cautious not to try and give one explanation, because if there's one thing that I've learned the last year, going to many, many countries, cities, regions, it is that the situation is really different from city to city, region to region, country to country. But the crisis also shows itself in the fact that many young people are not able to leave their parents' homes when they want to. So the average age of young people leaving their parents' nest is going up. Now, if you're living with your parents because you like it and they like it, then fine. I personally, I was 19 when I was 19.
Chances are that most young people prefer something else.
I was 19 when I left. I really love my parent, and I think it goes both ways. But we were ready for me to leave. But you know, it's very.
Did you have your own room?
I did.
Okay.
I did. It's very normal that the age is around 30 or something like that. That means a lot of things. It means that maybe you cannot really start the family life that you want. You cannot get the education or the job or the training that you want. So again, on the individual level, it's very, very bad, of course, but also for society, it's just the fact that we don't have the mobility that we need in the labor market, for instance, that people don't get the education that they really wanted, and we as a society need them to get. That's really bad. So we need to also look specifically at housing for young people, student housing for young people that are in training.
So you travel a lot across Europe.
Sure.
And then the housing commissioner comes to town, the mayor greets him.
Yes.
What do the mayors tell you? What do they want from you?
Yeah, so many mayors point to the fact that we have too stringent rules on state aid. So where are the state actually allowed to go in and support the building of new affordable housing or social housing? Now, some might say, why is it that the EU even has an opinion on what goes on in a member state, what they support or don't support? But this is because of the internal market. It actually does make sense that we have rules for what you can support and not support. But we have to admit that in the situation that we're in now and the way the rules are now, they are way too strict. So we need to transform them. They also say, listen, we need more investments. Can you help us get the investments in there that can spark this transition that we need? I don't think anybody believes that it should be public money, whether it's national money or EU money, that will solve this crisis. But we can use EU funding, for instance, where the market will not deliver. Or maybe we can use funding for de-risking investments so that €1 of public funding, whether it's national or European money, will actually mean that we have 4 or 5 or even 10 years of investments.
I guess that the people who are looking for a home don't care whether money is private or public. So you hear the complaints of the mayors. What do you tell them?
So I tell them many things, obviously. One, first I try not to tell them anything but listen. Because really, for us to do the right thing, the analysis needs to be right. But two, then I can actually point to some things that I can already now tell them, this is what we need. Cut the red tape and the bureaucracy, change the state aid rules so that it becomes easier to build affordable housing and social housing in the member states. Work on a pan-European investment platform together with the EIB to make sure that we boost investments. We need to also look at student housing, so the young people of our societies that are struggling the most, how can we help them? Homelessness, we have more than 1 million people that are homeless in Europe. Again, many of the things that you can do to tackle homelessness is probably going to have to be something that you do on a national level, but that doesn't mean that we cannot help each other. It doesn't mean that we cannot also share best practices and look at what has worked in one country and maybe what we can then help that will happen in a different country. So all of these things I will try and put into one holistic plan that I will present before Christmas.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I know that you're working on a plan.
Yes.
Can you tell us a few elements, a few principles, pillars of it, so that people can have a little bit of hope?
Sure. So, yeah, what we're trying to do is, of course, to have a holistic approach. And this means that there will be things that we can do on a European level. Yes, good, that's my responsibility. But there will also be things where we say, okay, well, we can do something on European level, but we need to do it in collaboration with member states. And then finally, there will be things where I will have to say, this I really think member states should do. It's not my competency to force them to do it or even give the incentives. But my recommendation is that you do it. Look, here's a best practice. Why don't you copy that? Now, on the things that we can do from a European level, certainly the state aid rules are too strict as they are now. We need to loosen them. We need to make it possible for member states to actually support affordable housing. We need to look at permitting rules, rules that are just simply too bureaucratic. Maybe they were made for a good reason a decade ago, but today now we are in a crisis. We need to build more faster, so that is a necessity. And then what can be done on a European level to get more investments? Because really it's a paradox that there's actually not a lack of money out there in the markets wanting to be invested. I mean, the institutional investors are there. They're looking for long-term investments that will bring them back a steady revenue. And the housing sector is actually pretty good at that, seen from an investor's perspective. So why isn't it happening? Well, there's some uncertainties in the markets. And maybe we can also help de-risk those investments. We can certainly help bring the investors and the ones who need the investments together. And that's what we're trying to do with the Pan-European investment platform that we're making together with the European Investment Bank.
Are you in favor of caps on rent?
No, I'm not in favor of the European Union setting caps on rents. Again, this is also one of the areas where we need to be a little bit cautious that we don't think we can run everything from Brussels. There needs to be the room also for making decisions nationally and even locally. But I am in favor of doing whatever I can from Brussels to make sure that the rent go down, the price of the mortgage go down, the cost of living in a house go down, because we have to remember it's not only how much you pay either as a rent or in form of a mortgage. It's also how expensive it is to live in the home for other reasons, like energy, for instance. Mm-hmm. So for most people, the second biggest bill that they will pay, apart from the rent, will be for energy. I'm also responsible for energy in the Commission, so hopefully my plan will also reflect that, in that we need a holistic approach where we also try and bring down the prices of energy. 47 million people last year were not able to adequately heat their homes in Europe. This is really, for me, very, very serious situation and totally unacceptable. Basically, if you're not able to heat your home, it means that you have to choose between, do you want to buy food or do you want to freeze?
All of these developments that you've described are known for many years. We could see this coming. Why hasn't been done anything until now?
So I'm not sure I would agree with you 100% there. So I served 10 years in the European Parliament, and 10 years after that, member of the Danish Parliament, minister, and so on. So I've been to hundreds, maybe even thousands, I haven't counted, meetings on the EU, in city halls, in schools, everywhere. And I can honestly tell you, until a few years ago, I didn't have one question on housing. It was always the environment, climate, how do we fight crime, all of these issues that are usually top of the agenda when speaking about EU policy. I would say, actually, even certainly in my own country, a few years back there would even be an opposition against the EU even dealing with housing, because people would say that's a national competency. So I'm not saying there hasn't been problems and challenges before, and I actually share the analysis that had we done something 10 years or 20 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation now. I'm just saying that it hasn't really been that high on the political agenda before. Now we see the problems, and now we then have to act. I don't think anybody expects the EU, Brussels, to solve all problems in all member states. Of course not. But we do need to work together when we see a crisis that really is to be found in all member states. And as I've explained a few times here today, there are also quite concrete things that we need to do and that we will do.
Let's look ahead now. So Brussels is aware of the problem, the national governments, state governments, local authorities, the mayors. So everybody knows what's going on. How do you think the situation will look like in, say, 5 years? Are we heading towards a improvement of the situation? There could be many factors, demographic, economic, etc.
Oh, well, it can go different ways. I mean, if we don't do anything, I think these problems will be even bigger. They're not going to solve themselves. So there's a need for political action. And I'm an optimist, and I think certainly the fact that we have now identified this to also be a European problem means that we set it very high on the agenda also here in the EU and in the European Commission. I think many people noticed that President von der Leyen in her State of the Union spoke about housing, not just mentioned it in a sense, and she spoke at length about the housing crisis and called it a social crisis. This is a testament to the fact that we in the European Commission really take this serious. And I can also say that when working on this plan, there's been a lot of engagement from the European Parliament. They've set up an ad hoc committee to work with this. And also my colleagues internally in the Commission, because it's important to say that if we are to solve the housing problems, there's not just one area where you just fix it. You have to look at investments, you have to look at energy, you have to look at social policies, you have to look at internal market policies, state aid rules. So there's so many things that needs to be dealt with in a holistic and combined approach that if we don't do that, then I fear we will not solve the problems. But as I said, I am actually quite optimistic because I see the willingness to act.
I have one more question on something totally different.
Yes.
It always brings me joy when I come across people in Brussels who write books. Now, you have written about a dozen or so, and I looked at them, and one title got my attention. From,
it's in Danish,
2009. I know. The English translation is Between Mars and Venus, the Role of the EU in the Future World Order. So that was a few years back. Where are we headed? Towards Mars or Venus in 2025?
Well, so this refers to, of course, the fact that back then it was a very normal way of characterizing the US versus the EU, that the US were from Mars, hard power, weapons, conflicts. It's a caricature, but that's how it was described. Whereas the EU, we were more diplomacy, soft power. Probably today it's not even politically correct to say that that's Venus and that's Mars and that's feminine and that's masculine, but nonetheless, that's how it's been depicted often in academia. And my point then was, listen, yes, the EU should continue to be a soft power, and soft power very often will be the best way of influencing other countries and regions in the world by showing the good example, by making rules, by using diplomacy, all of these things. And we are still doing that. But already then I argued, we also need to be able to protect ourselves. So sometimes you need hard power. So that's why it's not either Venus or Mars, it's in between Venus and Mars. And I will say, unfortunately, that analysis turned out to be even more correct than I thought. I will even say I certainly did not see or foresee how serious a situation we would end up in now with Russia and with also the complications in NATO. But on the other hand, I will also say we have acted fast. The European Union is now also engaged in defense collaboration, much closer than we've been before. We're still also using soft power in the sense that we are the biggest contributor with development aid in the world. We are active in multilateralism, the green transition, the COP meetings, when nations get together and discuss what to do about climate change, EU takes leadership. And that's soft power.
All right, fascinating conversation. Dan Jørgensen, EU Commissioner for Energy and Housing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.